welcome all very much. Namaste to the fourth session of Aarohana, which is also our first uh, Ask Me Anything session focused on the food and beverages category. As you know, NICE has got five focus categories: health and wellness, food and beverages, home decor and furnishings, fashion and accessories, and experiential tourism. And this is the first program that we have on one of the focus categories, namely food and beverages. So, very, very warm welcome to all of you. And before I start, I wanted to uh, talk a bit about the housekeeping tips. We will mute all participants, and all your questions, comments that you have will be answered. We request that you please put them up in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and just ask a specific question. If it's directed at one of the two speakers, please mention that so we know who to direct this. Some of the questions that we may not be able to answer due to shortage of time, we will respond to it. Please send in your questions to arohana@niceorg.in. Also, please keep checking your mail to respond to any feedback requests that we may have. And of course, certificates of participation will be issued at the end of 3 months. And you need to attend at least 75% of the sessions to be eligible. And you can watch the session live also on Facebook. The Facebook link is given there, facebook.com/niceorg.in. And we also have a LinkedIn group, Nice Aarohana. And the link is mentioned there. You can join the group, and you can view all our earlier sessions in case you missed them, and catch up with each other, and also catch up with the regular updates that we have. All right, so that is some of the housekeeping tips. And so with that, we move to today's session, which is an Ask Me Anything food and beverages category. We've got two very eminent, experienced leaders from the world of food and beverages. We have the CEO of Paradise Biryani, Gautam Gupta, and there is Vaitheeswaran, who runs the beverages business called Again Drinks. He's a veteran serial entrepreneur. Gautam is a very experienced and senior corporate leader. So we'll get very good perspectives from both of them on the food and beverages category. All right, so let's jump right in. So what I'm going to do is we'll keep this conversation kind of interactive and informal, and we will run through this in approximately about 40 minutes. Thereafter, we will open it up for Q&A so that all of you get a chance to participate. The planned close of the session is 15 minutes past 5. So we've got a 75-minute session with about 25-30 minutes for Q&A. All right, so now we jump right in. And let me now stop the screen share so that we can all now participate and in this Ask Me Anything. So first is, let me just start with Gautam. Gautam, you're probably, the Paradise Biryani, the organization that you run, is arguably India's most well-known and largest biryani chain. And typically, when we think of biryani, we think of some great aromatic food and, a lot of exciting stuff happening. So what's your day typically like? With all the imagery around biryani and everything else, comfort food for many, many millions of people. What is your day typically like, both pre and post-COVID?
Yeah, so I will divide it into three parts. What was pre-COVID, which we called business as usual, and then there was where there was zero business, and then post, I'm not saying post-COVID, but in the current situation where there is business recovery. So first, I'll talk about what is common, what doesn't change. Because the good thing about life is a lot of things don't change, even if we want to. Right? There are some interesting things which change as CEO's life. I think one thing which, any business leader running a business, I think one thing which hasn't changed is that you have to wear different hats on the same day, right? So that hasn't changed. So you start as a supply chain head in the morning. pre-noon you are moved to an HR head, and then post lunch you are an operations head. So like any business leader, you typically wear multiple hats during the day of internal stakeholder and external stakeholder, and that continues. Um, One thing we changed, I would say, during the second period where there was no business, I think there was a very, very important need for keeping the team motivated. Because our business, restaurant business, actually, it was zero business. Like zero as in we didn't even have a decimal place for at least a few weeks, right? And I think that was a very important period for us to sort of use technology like we are using today to, sort of be in touch, huddle together every day, uh, which was not the case in the previous, time. Brainstorm and just have belief. I think this is all about having belief that things will turn around, and we use that time to actually do a lot of stuff, involve a large part of management into various projects which people were not able to do during their day-to-day work. So we actually did about 47 projects in our company, small and big, and we are now realizing that some of these projects are really helping us come out strongly in the post-COVID or pre-post-COVID world, let me put it that way. And I think post-COVID or this current scenario, I think what has things are almost back to normal daily life, but I think we are using more of, or most of us are using technology more to collaborate. And for our business, I think some of you have been, followers of technology for a couple of decades or many decades. But you have to realize that in restaurant industry, technology is relatively new, right? Both from a business point of view as well as from a collaboration point of view, right? So I think the adoption of technology has been huge, and I believe that my own productivity and productivity of our teams have improved because of technology. So yes, we have started going to office, do work. Our restaurants are open, thankfully, but we still use technology to collaborate. So I think some things haven't changed, but some things have definitely changed, and largely for the better.
So, Gautam, if you don't mind, can you just speak up a little bit, come a little closer. I think there's a little bit of a problem with the audio. Yeah, next time, let's do that.
Sure, sure.
Great. So, thanks. So, you basically, to a quick recap, there's a increased usage of technology. You've done some 47 projects and initiatives within the company to launch new programs. And like you said, there are multiple hats that you wear in the course of a single day to deal with different kinds of challenges and issues that have cropped up. And you're now saying that things seem to be returning to normal, which is great. Now, Vaidi, you're a veteran of a startup business. India's first e-commerce outfit you started. Now you've launched a beverage business called Again Drinks, and it's a startup, unlike an established play like Paradise Biryani. How would you characterize your day? And is it pretty similar to what Gautam just talked about?
Um, yeah, first of all, Sanjay, thank you for having me here. It's a very quite exciting and privileged to be part of the first AMA that you folks are conducting. So, there are some things like Gautam said, some things have changed, some things have not. But in our case, I think, I must tell you, we got lucky because as a startup, unlike a Paradise, which is a running business, we had launched a product just recently, about a year and a half back, and most of our time initially, at least my time, was spent in organizing retail outlets and partners and signing up chains, which is a fairly long and challenging process. You sample, and most of it was not in Bangalore. You have to go to Bombay because the headquarters are there. So half my time was actually spent in Bombay, meeting retailers, sampling products, discussing and signing up what is called trade margins, operating agreements with all of them. We got lucky because by the time COVID happened, I think most of them were already in place. Either some of the agreements we had signed or we had started discussing with most of them. So we were able to, in a post-COVID scenario, move most of these discussions forward and conclude. In fact, many of the chains that we have launched recently, such as Reliance and Ratnadeep and Loyal World in Bangalore, have all, because of action that we took before COVID. Post COVID, we couldn't have started from scratch. So in a sense, we got lucky. How the days have changed. We're a very small company yet, Sanjay, even though we now shipping nationally through Amazon. The fact is we're still less than 10 people. And hence, we used to operate out of a very small room in Domblur. So the moment COVID happened, and the small room was also doubling up as our warehouse where we stored both raw materials and finished goods. So the one thing that COVID did is we had to stop going to office, not just because of infection risk, but the small office that we operate as a startup certainly is not meant for social distancing norms. So we just took the decision that everybody will work from home except supply chain people. So supply chain and operations people go every day because the delivery is to be made, packing to be done, and all of that. You buy raw materials, you stock, you have to make sure the rooms are kept below a certain temperature so the raw materials are stored well. Everybody else has started working. Now, again, when I'm saying everybody else, it's essentially 3 people in office and 4 people at home. So it's not a large team. How my day, so how my day has changed. What I've done is, given the fact that we are now, earlier it was fairly simple. There's a single table, and our office again did not have a table inside, so we actually operated out of the pantry and canteen out of another office. So there's a large digital marketing company, and they rented us the terrace of the company where they run a canteen, but obviously it was very cheap. So we used to sit in the canteen and the pantry through. So that the pantry was our conference room. And everybody sitting around the table would essentially discuss and close. So now what we've done is we meet every day virtually, and we've got 3 lists of things, 3 different lists. The first list is today's firefighting issues. The second thing is the monthly metrics, the sales goals or the production goals that we have. And then I have something called a quarterly hurdles that we have to cross and big landmarks that we have to achieve as a company. So every alternate day, we spend about half an hour reviewing progress on all the 3 lists. I mean, each of them take a few minutes, but everybody says what progress they've made. If there's something that requires coordination, and this is 4 people, the brand, the lady who heads the brand, the lady who heads the sales, the gentleman who heads production, and 4 of us. That's all we do. And then after that, people just operate from home. They are on phone calls. So it's very different. I'm not saying that it's easy, to be honest. I agree with Gautam. Productivity has gone up, but I think we end up working longer hours. And in a startup, you're always worried whether in our absence is something going wrong. So far so good, but not having the backup of a strong support system, we constantly under tension by working from home. So I don't know how that works for other startups.
Yeah, but that's a very interesting perspective because it's in a way a contrast to Paradise Biryani, and the fact that it's a low cost, frugal operation where you double up, and you negotiate, and like you said, you were lucky that you managed to get all the contracts with your suppliers and demand chain people in place before COVID hit, and now it's a matter of working together to a plan, which is great. And therefore, for other startups, it's important to have this focus on what the challenges are, what the daily and what the vision is, and what needs to be achieved, right? And then stay ruthlessly focused on executing that. Gautam, coming to you again. When we think of biryani, there are lots of different kinds of people we would imagine who would be consuming the biryani, right? Typically now with election season, we read all the time that that a lot of voters tend to get swayed by offers of biryani. So I'm wondering, who are your customers? There are students, there are executives, there are families, salespeople, different kinds of people, right? If you can just help us understand what kinds of customers you serve, and also how do you serve different classes or types of customers? There's delivery, there's a takeaway, maybe you run some catering. Of course, now that's not the right time to talk about it. There is in-restaurant dining, etc. But typically, if you were to kind of help our audience understand this, how should they be listening to you with regard to creating their own business?
Right. So coming to the customers, I think the product that we serve is a comfort food, as you mentioned very rightly. So we call our customers both masses and classes, right? So we have a whole, range of customers who come to our restaurants. We see couples, we see young guys, we also see families coming for celebration. Biryani is also a celebratory food. During lunch hours, we see, especially in places where like Bangalore and IT areas, we see a lot of official corporate groups coming in. I think we call our customer segment masses and classes, as broad as it can get, right? On the channels, I think that's a very relevant point, and this has been a big learning in the industry also, that about 5 years back, for us, business in delivery, which is home delivery, was just about 5%, right? In fact, largely for traditional Indian players, that was the case. But we have seen a continuous growth, 5 going to 10%, 10 going to 20%, and now obviously this is becoming a big share. At a steady state, I believe it would not be less than 30 to 40% of any business. So I think that is something which players like us have taken notice of. And as in Bangalore, is the hub of all technology entrepreneurs, right? So Swiggy is from there, and we have relied and we have had a good partnership with players like Swiggy and Zomato to deliver at home. And we have, you might be interested to find, know that biryani is actually the most ordered dish on delivery platforms. And this is from secondary data coming from Swiggy and Zomato. More than pizza. Pizza is the category which taught the whole concept of home delivery. But I think biryani has taken over very quickly, fortunately.
Yeah, nice.
To add to that, I think this has also necessitated that companies like us become technology savvy. So, in fact, we have just launched our own application also, own delivery app, where customers can. So, it is still in Hyderabad. We'll come to Bangalore very soon. Because the hypothesis and the learning from the industry was that customers are now, especially in post-COVID world, are giving more preference to brand apps, especially brands that are strong. So there is a greater affinity to gravitate towards the brand apps, and their customers tend to be more sticky and loyal. So we saw that opportunity, and actually during the COVID time only we did a lot of work of development. And I think a couple of weeks back we just launched our own app. I am pleased to say that in our own application, the number of delivery orders we are getting in a couple of restaurants are more than the other aggregators. So this shows the power of brand and the willingness of customers to embrace these new concepts. So yes, we have the traditional takeout and dine-in concept, but delivery increasingly has become very, very important.
Got it. So thanks. So effectively now, technology is enabling you to reach out to a larger base and and go after them. Another question I have for you, Gautam, because there's something that's always intriguing when one thinks of the food business. One looks at only the customer-facing end of it. Nice, tasty, delicious, steaming, hot food that gets your salivary glands working. But but there's a lot that goes behind it, right? I mean, in the kitchen, the supply chain, the operations, all of that. And it's very important, therefore, to understand how consistent quality, the hygiene factors is maintained across so many different delivery channels, across so many different restaurants. How does one do that? And some pointers to our audience, to because those are also I believe are very, very important to be able to build a successful business. It's not just the customer facing end.
Yeah, so I think this is absolutely the most important question in food business. I think food business is about food first, and quality of food is directly proportional to the ingredients that you use. I would say that ingredients, high quality ingredients, working with good suppliers, established suppliers, and working with a long-term relationship is very critical. So, for Paradise, we have been working with certain suppliers for a couple of decades, right? We have strong relationships, whether it is rice or meat or a lot of other stuff.
Right.
So I think that what goes inside, comes outside in some way, right? So that having a control on your input matrix is very, very important.
Got it.
Now, the second part is, on execution, which is process, right? So execution in Indian food still is very, people centric. So I guess the second important part of consistency is about training. So there is a lot of effort, energy, time, resources actually go into training people. All the chefs are trained in a certain manner. They are certified. Only once they are ready, they are deployed. I think that's the second part of having consistency, right? And third is as you evolve, I think times have to change. So one of the endeavors we have had is that as we are scaling up, outside Hyderabad and maybe hopefully going outside India, we have to make sure that while we retain authenticity of our cuisine, we are also able to bring in automation and technology, which I think QSRs have done at a fantastic level. Today, KFC, Pizza Hut have 40,000, 50,000 restaurants across the world. And one of the reasons they have is they have absolutely nailed this aspect of automation. So any person with 7 to 15 days of training can also do the kitchen job, right? Indian food is different. We must acknowledge that. But I think there is still a scope of getting that automation into this. The last point is food safety. I think it is top of mind, absolutely important. This is where you have to work with the best of the partners. So we work with NSF International to do specific food safety protocols. In today's world, I think the awareness about food safety is even more. And I think as a responsible organization, that is something which is part of culture, but also you need to work with these experts to be able to enable you to find the gaps and work on them.
Got it. Hey, thanks. Vaidi, you're about a 2-year-old startup. And so just help our audience understand what made you get into the beverages business? How did you go about it? So if tomorrow somebody wants to start a beverage business like you have done, how should they go about it? What are the kinds of things they should worry about? The people and the processes, the partnerships, etc. How does one go about that?
So, Sanjay, I must confess that, and you know this very well, when we started this FMCG business, I had zero experience in FMCG, so or food and beverages, and therefore, I think it was an advantage. I know what I'm saying sounds very strange, but I, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the startup ecosystem, sometimes tend to make too much of domain expertise. And while domain expertise is very important, I think at some stages, some points, it can also become restrictive in nature. And I think we experienced that because when we saw an opportunity, typically as entrepreneurs, there's a problem, there's a solution, and then you figure out there's a market opportunity. And we saw that in the beverages. And just to quickly tell you, there isn't any beverage that is truly healthy and tasty at the same time. So there are beverages are either healthy or tasty or really neither, but there's nothing that's both. So we felt there was an opportunity. But because we were clueless about it, I think we had a big advantage. A lot of things that people with 20 years of experience in the space believe cannot be done, because we didn't have a clue about it, we felt that it can be done. And I think that made a huge difference to us. What did we do? We realized that this is the product. I mean, we used our experience as retailers in Fab Mall for so many years and said, look, these are the things a retailer is looking for. So, for example, one of the insights that we knew is if you make a product, a beverage in India that requires cold chain, the product is okay. It obviously runs the risk of contamination at the consumer level. But more importantly, the business will never make money. Right? I mean, you'll always struggle, but the costs of cold chain are very high. So we said, look, we want a product that is ambient and that is non-negotiable. So how did we do it? We put specs like this, saying the product must have these features. It should not have sugar. It should not have preservatives. It must be ambient. All of that we put. And then we went about building the product. And as we went building the product, the first decision is, can we make this in-house or can we make this outsourced to somebody else? And we decided to outsource it because we met somebody who could build it. But the more important thing that happened is we went and I think for about a period of about 3-4 months, I personally went and fixed up meetings, all people that I knew, didn't know them personally, very senior leaders in the beverage business, India and abroad, and the big names, Coke, Pepsi, Nestle's, ITC, using our contacts, reach out to somebody who's very senior, request a meeting in a coffee shop, go and sit, ask them one question, and spend most of the time of that 1 hour listening, just making notes. And each meeting would tell us one new thing that we didn't know before the meeting. And I think after a period of 6, 7 months, I think we were able to put together and say, look, these are the challenges in this business. Now let's figure out how to solve them. And I think that, it looks as if it was wasted time, but when I come back, I think it was probably time really well spent, because we managed to, I think, nail down what is likely to hold our growth. And I think we managed to do that. To me, that was very, very important. In fact, I must tell you, I also reached out to a professor of marketing at an M7B school in the US. He was visiting India for some seminar. I read about it in some agenda like this. I wrote to him saying, "You are coming to India. I want to see you in Bangalore." And there was no reason. But I managed to meet him, spend 1 hour. He gave me some insights of the beverage business and how it works in the US, and also some moving parts. So, I think simply listening for almost 1 year, and I know 1 year is a long time, but in retrospect, for a consumer brand, 1 year is a very short period of time. Writing copious notes, or what are they saying? And I think every single meeting, like I told you, give us a fresh insight. And to me, that was the day we build the way we will build the product. The actual product development was challenging, but to me, this listening period perhaps was the key to putting together what we did. As far as our own team was concerned, essentially what we did is, we didn't have a team when we started, just me and my co-founder. And I think we did it like most startups do. We went and hired 6 interns. And the reason we had 6 interns is that initially we felt, look, we are clueless about this business. We don't want too many people at the experience level. Let's figure out what to do. So we got a set of interns. But as the business started growing and we realized we needed specific expertise in an area, we went and hired leaders and experienced people. So now, for example, for our sales, we now have somebody who's got 12, 15 years experience. She comes from IIT Madras, does an MBA, and has spent lots of years in Kellogg and Del Monte and Coca-Cola. So now we've started hiring people with domain expertise. So I think it's been a strange journey. Typically, the normal advice to startups is that get people who know about the business, focus on domain expertise. We've done it differently. I wouldn't advise everybody to say, therefore, get into areas that you're clueless about. But I think sometimes not having that baggage did help us in reaching where we have reached so far. So,
yeah. So that's very interesting, fascinating journey. I mean, sure, I think the key takeaway point is meet as many people as possible and learn like crazy from them by listening to them, right? Ask the question and let them talk, and you really learn to listen. Well, one of the main issues in a beverage business, apart from the branding and the product, is really the distribution, right? I mean, if the product is not available at the point of purchase for a customer, you typically don't make the sale, right? How did you go about setting up the distribution?
Sanjay, here I'm going to again confess that here we started with a big advantage. And I think the advantage is that we came with and we are one of those people where the average age of the founders was 54 years old, right? So my co-founder is 51, I'm 58. So in a sense, again, it turned out to be an advantage because we've been in the retail space for over 2 decades. Sandeep, after we sold Fab Mall, was the head of operations, national operations for Nilgiris for many years. So I think we had massive connects and networks in the industry, and I think it was a big advantage. For any startup food and beverage brand, you hit the nail on the head. I think distribution is they obviously take the easy way out, saying I'll do D2C, I'll do digital, and obviously post-COVID and given the nature of the profile of the audience, it makes sense. But the reality is that 90% of food and beverage sales still happen offline. So you can't just ignore the whole thing. The challenge is getting onto those shelves because retail offline shelves are very careful about what they sell. Our advantage was because we've been 20 years in the industry, a lot of people, we built networks and contacts. We are now able to get into the decision making, the corner rooms fairly easily as compared to a startup. And I think it's a very unfair advantage, but it is what it is. And I think that helped us because, the key thing in getting onto a shelf is to meet the right person. In large chains All of them are Bombay based. Whether you take a Reliance or whether you take the Tata Group or anybody, locating the category manager or whether more or somebody locating the category manager is a challenge. Then getting the category manager to talk to you, listen to your about your story, sample your product, then decide to carry it. They don't care, right? I mean, they already carry 12 beverages. You're the 13th. What do they care? I mean, anyway, have restricted shelf. So I think we managed to get that hurdle. I must tell any startups who want to do this, it's important to be on offline shelves, but please be prepared for a really, really long haul. It's not going to be easy because everybody won't have that. In fact, one specific example I must tell you, Sanjay, is that about in 2003, we hired a person as a merchandiser in Fab Mall. He's now the head of commercial for the Tata Group in the retail group. He's been in the retail industry for 17 years. Right? He's now heading. So those are things that come to us because of our advantage. But I must warn that this is the biggest challenge getting into offline shelves. Obviously, you focus on digital because it's an easy way to grow. Nobody can stop you, or get into third-party e-commerce platforms like an Amazon and Big Basket. But offline will be a challenge. And if you want to do it, be prepared for a truly, truly long haul. I mean,
Right.
meeting the people is a challenge.
Yeah. So I think that's very, very important and sane advice that I think will stand a lot of entrepreneurs in good stead. And every startup needs to have some unfair advantage, right? And you guys have the experience of being in the business, and most importantly, I think it's been cultivating the relationships, right? Which is another good
Right.
takeaway point for young entrepreneurs, that you need to establish relationships and nurture them over time. Now let me move back to Gautam. Gautam, when you um, at Paradise Biryani, right? There's a very rich history. There's a legacy of the brand. It's been around for some decades, and and it's very it's created this legacy, right? For you, how important has that been? Particularly given that there is a entirely new demographic today that's emerging in India, right? An entirely new generation. How does one do the branding? How does one do the communication where you're able to convey the fact that this has been around, there's a history, there's a legacy, and then yet make it appealing to the younger generation or the new generation? Let me put it that way.
Right. So I think in food services and food businesses, the concept of provenance is usually very successful. So to give you an example, I think we talk about Swiss chocolate, right? We talk about Italian pizza, and we talk about, Chinese noodles, right? So that's why Hyderabadi biryani. So actually, the fact that we have a legacy, we are a cultural brand from Hyderabad actually helps. Um, and what it also brings. So I think what my understanding of the new generation is that one of the things they really value is authenticity. Now, the way you and me, look at authenticity is different from probably the new generation. New generation, it is all about, for example, traceability, saying I need to know where my ingredients are coming from. I think that is authenticity, right? Uh, so I guess the Paradise brand lent itself to authenticity. It has the strong point of provenance. I think that's a good starting point. However, as you mentioned, reaching out this new age is extremely different from the conventional method, right? So I think one of the biggest focus area for us has been digital, hyper local digital marketing. So we are in the trade area business. Typically, a 5 kilometer radius is our market of any restaurant. How are we able to create that sort of connect with the customer, with the new age customer through digital, has been an exceptional learning for us, right? In the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. Let me give you a couple of examples. So, for example, uh, using the food bloggers, people who are the influencers in this category, and they are very young. Usually these people are pretty young, right? That actually gives us a big credibility to be built. So recently we launched this brand in Calcutta. Calcutta Paradise is relatively unknown, but the single channel of food bloggers inviting them, making them sort of experience the Paradise food service and everything, and then they becoming your sort of media. became a big success for us. So I would say in that case, it was the single biggest channel for us, right? I mean, bloggers through, and they put this on Instagram, they put this on YouTube, and we saw no other advertising, conventional advertising was needed. It was just one single channel, right? The other thing which we have also been able to do again is connecting with the customers through loyalty program, right? So loyalty programs have been in retail for long, right? But the way to reach the customers and to create customized offerings basis their buying behavior is something which is good learning from retail, and that is something which we are also using. Works pretty well for the younger customer, works for family customer, so and so forth. So I think moving to digital technology, moving using social media, using influencer groups, this is something which is now uh, given. Now, one simple learning, and I'm sure this is something which might be sounding very naive, that uh, Google Maps is actually the single biggest tool to search for restaurants, right? It is not Swiggy, it is not Zomato. And we realized that our Google listings, which are the business listings, they needed a ramp up. We have about 45 lakhs customers visiting our Google listings every month. 45 lakhs, that's not a small number. But we half of the locations we didn't even claim, for example. And our, the imagery we were projecting on the Google listings were not standard. Now, this is something which comes naturally to any digital marketer, right? But for our conventional business, this was a great learning. And we invested a lot of time in the last few quarters making sure that our Google listings have harmony, they have some sort of engagement. And we have seen that, through the, because you have Google listing, you can also track the store visits with that. We are able to see a large conversion of people visiting our Google listings, coming to our stores and actually having food. I think digital learning has been our big story to meet the new customer.
So so that is important. That is using digital to as a way to reach out to more and more customers, and and 4.5 million of them every month is a not a number to sneeze at. In the case of Vaidi, you didn't have any of the legacy or challenges that, or let's say the provenance that you could leverage that
Yeah.
Gautam had with Paradise. So how did you go about creating a unique space for again drinks, and and that too in a crowded space like beverages? How did you create that unique space for yourself?
So we when we evaluated all the beverages in the market, like I mentioned earlier, we realized that most of the beverages were either tasty but not healthy, healthy but not tasty, or neither healthy nor tasty. So we felt the real opening was that can we create an opportunity market for a product that is both tasty and healthy. So that was the broad approach. I'm not saying that we managed to do that yet, but typically when you're launching, and you're right, beverage is a very crowded category. When you're launching a startup in this area, unless you find your own niche to play around with, then you're always going to be under pressure. And in the FMCG business, you're fighting serious giants who don't have a capital problem, who have enormous brand, deep penetration as a distributor. So you need to be very clear what is your market that you're addressing. So I think we found that gap and we said we want to focus on that. What we realized is that on the one hand, you're competing with large beverage brands, obviously who are either thirst quenchers or offering some semblance of taste. And in India, taste is a very funny thing, no? What I've learned, Sanjay, over the last 1.5 years in this business is that in India there are only three taste levels, which is if it's sweet, then you're tasty. If it's very sweet, then very tasty. If it's very sweet, then it's delicious. So there's really no taste except these three. So, and we were saying that we're going to have a product which is not that will not have sugar. So we knew that clearly from a taste bud point of view, we had to establish the fact that we are going to be less on the sweet index. So, but in a sense, it was an opportunity for us to establish something unique. As we found, we also realized that the startups who were launching or had launched beverages in the last 5, 10 years were also targeting the same healthy space, but I think they had not figured out a way of making the business sustainable. In other words, there are cold pressed juices in the market. They're targeting the healthy beverage consumer. But because they were using cold chain, it was a business that was unlikely to be sustainable. So we said first we'll target a healthy and tasty product market, and then we'll create a brand that is not just healthy from a customer point of view, but healthy from a business point of view. In other words, we must build a business that is sustainable. It may be a long, hard climb, but it's important to build a brand that can sustain itself and not merely dependent on constant inflow of investment. And I think when we put that out there and we wrote it down, read it for a few times, we realized that here is an opportunity for us to focus. Then we went and did some research in the world, and we realized what are the fastest growing areas. And we came across this very interesting thing, two interesting things. One is the US Department of Agriculture lists 5 different food groups which are essential for the human body, which is dairy, fruits, vegetables, proteins, and grains. And we realized nobody was making beverages using all of them. So we said, okay, here's really a product that we can focus on because nobody's using this. So we said we'll do that. The next interesting thing we found out is that drinkable yogurts as a category in China alone, just in China, moved from $0 to $6 billion in a 5-year period. And we're reasonable to assume that India would follow. India is the biggest consumer and producer of milk. So we said, look, and we still don't have a drinkable yogurt worth the name. So when we put all of this together, we suddenly found ourselves having, here is a platform, here is a positioning that we can go after. And we just targeted this. So it sounds niche, but the good thing about India, and all of us know this very well, even a small percentage in India is actually a very large number. So it's not that it was a small market. Even if you say that we're going to target only 20% of the total beverage market, it's actually a huge market. In fact, we think our addressable market today, putting all the restrictions, dairy, beverages, healthy, this price point, is still 10,000 crores. So you're always be able to find something that is worth targeting, reasonable size, as long as you've done enough research and homework and saying, here is a market worth going after. So that's what we've done. And like I told you, it's not that we have succeeded yet, it's still a long way to go, but at least we seem to have clarity as to what we are trying to do. What we're not saying is, I'm going to compete with everybody in the market, in the beverage space, because then we're not going anywhere and clearly we'll get killed.
Yeah, very great. So I think the point that you are making also, Vaidhi, that is having clarity of thought on what it is that your drink is all about, and doing the research, talking to people to figure out what it is that it stands for. You talked about, and the important point I think you made also is that it not only should it be healthy for the consumer, it's got to be healthy for your business, and therefore that also in turn determines the way the product is formulated. And in fact, when you were talking about sustainable business, it almost sounded like you're a business ready for nice, because our focus is on creating sustainable businesses based on cultural artifacts, like yogurt and milk and so on. So wonderful. So what I'll do now, it's 4:45. I'm going to jump into the questions that our audience, our participants have sent in, and have both of you respond to that. So that we are able to do justice to their questions. One of the questions that has come in is from Mr. Raghavan. He says, in the juice business, after you finalized a product configuration, etc., how did you develop the staying power to manage working capital? And then you got some senior people. How did you go through that process of managing that effort?
Okay. So, Raghavan, good question. I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first part is, how did we have the staying power? I think obviously, and I would advise this to every single entrepreneur, is in this space, if you want to create a product that is likely to do well, I think you must put your money where your mouth is. So we put our money and built the product. All the money, you'll be surprised at the kgs and kgs of fruits and vegetables that we bought and threw, the liters of milk that we threw simply because the test failed, but they were all our money, but we knew it was going after good. So we built the product using our money. Once we had the samples ready, we reached out to individuals, investors who we felt would be interested in a space like this, and we met hundreds of them. It's obviously not an easy thing, but we managed to get a bunch of 10, 15, 20 people who were willing to write small checks, each of them saying, here's the money. Now you seem to have variant, use it for the launch. So I think that's how we built it. And we are very clear that we will put our money to build the product, but we will not launch with our money because, FMCG is a very expensive area and we individually can't put our money to launch and build awareness. So we said we will fund product development. We will go to individuals and raise a very small sum of money to help us get to launch. And then we will go and raise larger sums of money, which is what I'm trying to do now. So that was one part. As far as hiring the leadership team, senior expensive team, people are concerned, given a startup and limited resource, well, it is a skill. It is a skill, and I'm not good at all. Otherwise, there are so many people out there I wish were working for us, but we can't afford to get them. But I think in all of these cases, the key is to one, locate people who are, in a sense, resounding or connecting with your story, saying, okay, here is a chance. So we go to people who got 15 years of experience in FMCG, 12 years of experience in beverages, and say, look, here is a chance for you to stop doing what you're doing. You're doing very well, but why don't you come and help build a global brand from scratch? Now, that's something that can be inspiring. Obviously, will pay you much less. But if you succeed in this, you could be creating enormous value for yourself through ESOPs. But there is no easy answer, Raghavan, to say how to recruit senior people for startups. I think you just keep going at it. And if you meet 10 people, 8 will say no, 2 will say yes, and before joining, 1 will drop out. It's normally the way it goes. But, you just have to keep going at it, which is why after so many years, we still have only 1 senior person. And I'm hoping we'll get a few more. On the other hand, for a business like the FMCG business, which is fairly process driven and it's no art, it's just science, right? It's just all nailed down, no rocket science. If you get 3-4 good people, you should be able to expand because the rest are people who just want to follow instructions and process. So in a sense, you're not looking for great innovation at this stage. So I think it should be doable with efforts.
Great. Thanks, Vaidhi. Question for Gautam, with all the high cost of retail and everything else, what do you think about cloud kitchens? Do you see that as something interesting, or you see that as a challenge? You see that as a threat?
So I would answer this question and this in a way because I myself don't know the full answer if you ask me, but I will share my personal view and the experience. I think the verdict is still out that you can build a restaurant brand without the restaurant. Question number, I think that's one. I think the food services industry has a very important ingredient of experience. So it's not only about food; it is about service. It is about going out. It is about enjoying yourself together with your loved one. So I think the romantic in me would say that this is something which is not going to be a great success story, right? However, let me share the businessman in my. So my the businessman inside me says that it is a very asset-light model. Most of the scaled-up models in the modern history are asset-light models. Whether it is cab company or aggregators. So asset-light model can be scaled up. What is important is customer acquisition and the cost of customer acquisition, and secondly, product delivery. So just to give you an example, not all products are suitable for delivery. So let me give you an example of dosa, right? Our good old masala dosa is one of the most popular, product. It is found in north, east, west, south in all hotels, breakfast and all that. But it is not the top selling delivery product. So if you have because it does not retain its crispiness and its shape and whatever. While biryani and some of the other products like pizza you are able to reach the customer in a fairly decent form. So I would say that building a brand or only on a cloud kitchen model may be risky. Verdict is still out. But if you have a hybrid model where you have a few flagship stores which give the customer the experience, build the brand, and then for penetration into neighborhoods, you use cloud kitchen, I think that could work. Is there a company with that kind of a model right now? No. Either you have large cloud kitchen players and you have players like us which are still experimenting with different models. But my hypothesis is a hybrid model like that could work in future.
Great. Thanks, Gautam. Question for Vaidi from Jaggi Nadik. He says, while it is good to hear about the investment and the thinking that went into the product formulation, product quality, and all of that, it's a fact that in the beverages business, trying to build a brand requires a lot of marketing spends as well. Can you give an approximate percentage-wise breakup about how you would spend money between marketing, operations, and product development?
So, Jaggi, I think the answer to that depends on what stage of the company you are, right? So there's no easy breakdown that I can give you. But if you're building a product from scratch, I think in the first, let's say 12 months of product development, like I told you, we put all our money to build the product. So the first 6 months, almost 100% of our product money went into product development. In the next 12 months, I would say 30-40%, because we continue to do testing and sampling. A large part of the money then spent into consumer research, because first we put our money and build a product. After that, you take that product and meet customers, and all over the people that I knew, people that I didn't know. I mean, I would just carry like a compounder, a chilled thing, and go and meet people, buy, throw away glasses and pour samples and keep meeting people. And I think while it doesn't look expensive, it is expensive, because we said we want to meet at least 300, 400 people. And out of the 300 people, we said half of them must be strangers. And therefore, I wouldn't go. So I would go and meet some people, but we employed a research agency. Then we actually did it in 3 different cities. We said we'll pick 3 different cities. So we picked Madurai, Pune, and Bangalore. So 3 different types of cities, 3 different states, 3 different customer profiles, carried samples, and went into strangers and started sampling. Just get product feedback. And I think that was the second part. Most of the money went there. Today, if you ask me now that the product is out in the market, at this point, I think a large part of our expenses are still going into people's salaries, which is still a big expense, because we're not spending too much. We're a very frugal company. But now, if I have to guess over the next 12 months, assuming that we are successful in raising a reasonable sum of money, I think 50% going forward would go into building brand and awareness. And the expenses into the next level of product development would come down. We're actually planning to expand from 4 to 8 variants, but the next 4 will not cost so much of money, because we now know the principles. So I think the answer to your question, the short answer is, it depends on what stage of the startup you are. I think those numbers would vary. If you look back over a 5-year period, I think most of your expenses would have gone into people and marketing, followed by product development. These 3 would be about 85% of your cost. Operations are not expensive. I must tell you, operations don't cost money, because if you're building an FMCG business, the cost of operations or supply chain goes into the product cost. So after you sell the product, you're actually recovering it. So, you should never worry about how much will it cost to ship, because you're going to recover it when you sell. If you're selling an FMCG product and not recovering the operational cost, then anyway, the business is going to suffer crazily. So I wouldn't worry about operational cost.
Yeah. Okay. So question for Gautam. The question is about in the food business, the restaurant, etc., that you set up. How does one go about hiring a chef? And this is from Reshma Sharma. She asks, how does one go about hiring a chef for a restaurant? Any mantra, any particular place where you go and suddenly you find chefs landing up? What's the way to do it?
So I think again, the skill part is easy. So if you are working in a certain cuisine, you look for those chefs. I think the fact that you are a known brand also helps you. So you put it out and people come. But I think one of the interesting things which we have seen recently is LinkedIn, right? So while the conventional channels have always been there, Naukri, all that, you have a good JD, define the cuisine experience, what kind of distributed setup is important. So for example, in our case, we need experience of distributed setup. So managing one large kitchen is under your own personal supervision is one challenge. But managing multiple small kitchens, some of them not in your direct supervision, is another challenge. So for us, the latter is the case, right? I think that's the easy part. But what we have realized is that, personally, I realized that using LinkedIn as a method, right? LinkedIn as a tool to hire is becoming increasingly effective, right? And I think you are able to do references and you are able to check a lot of background history through relevant contacts on your own if you are hiring on your own, or even your team if they are hiring on you. So I guess using LinkedIn has been very, very effective. And building an employer brand is very critical. So I think as you grow the size that we have, we constantly invest in building an employer brand through, again, our own LinkedIn, our social digital media handles and all that. And once we build that, people from IHMs, which is the largest source for us to get entry level chefs, is easy. But I think these are all the things which sort of we have learned over the last few years.
Right. Thanks. And question now for I think guess for both of you. It's about how does one deal? This is from Guru Palasa, who says, how does one deal with suppliers? I'm trying to source spices, but he's finding it to be a problem, right? I mean, fundamentally, how do you set up the supplier chains and how do you handle that? Some quick tips like do's and don'ts. Gautam.
Yeah, so I think for me, and this is my personal thing, I think I have not faced that challenge, to be honest. So, am I in the best position to answer that? I'm not sure, because Paradise, with the history and the unfair advantage, like Vaithi mentioned, of history was there. So we had long relationship with suppliers. For example, for cardamom, we work with the Kerala Cardamom Processing Company. We work with established sourcers like VKL, the spice manufacturers like VKL and Kinthite and so on and so forth. For some of the local produce, we work with local suppliers who have been with us. I think trust is an important factor which takes time, right? One thing which I have realized, the science part of it, is that you have to have your specifications in place. So, for example, if you are buying cardamom, what is the length of cardamom? What is the kind of oleo resins you need? What is the color? I think if it is well defined, the chances of getting a good quality product is higher. So I guess these are some of my learnings, but maybe I didn't face as many challenges as probably somebody else in setting up that supply chain, because I actually inherited it.
Right, right. And Vaidi, how would you answer that? How would you set up your suppliers? Because
So,
it's a startup. Yeah.
yeah, what we did is once we formulated the product, we applied some simple rules, nothing rocket science, which is each raw material product must have a minimum of two suppliers. So we went out and searched, and obviously we didn't know, so it was really hard work. So if you want to buy, let's say, cardamom, I'm saying cardamom because Gautam mentioned cardamom. We put cardamom in one of our drinks. So we went and met many cardamom suppliers. Then we spoke to people in the market, and they said these three people are good. So we established a minimum of two good suppliers for each of these. And then, and this is again a useful advice, I think, for many startups, I think you must decide when you're launching, what are you executing for? Many startups, especially those who have limited money when they start, execute for cost. And I think it's a big risk. Even though you feel as if you're spending money, when we launched, we said we'll execute for quality. So, for example, I'll tell you, we buy mango. Totapuri mango is available in the market only for 3 months, but we got a mango drink that is available 12 months of the year. Obviously, you have to buy from a supplier and stock it. There were many people giving us Alfonso mango. We use Alfonso mango and Totapuri. Only one or two were willing to give us certificate saying, I will certify that my Alfonso mango is actually Alfonso mango. And the reason I'm saying is during April, May, June, you'll find many people pushing carts and having in stores saying Alfonso mango. None of us know what is Alfonso mango. Most people don't know. So these people say, I will certify, but there's a cost to the certificate. That now we could have gone to a cheaper supplier, but we said for each of them, let's go for highest quality supplier. So initially, the way we built it, we went for the best number one and number two, and have signed everybody. Now that the product is out in the market, we are now trying to find out, can we find alternatives of the suppliers who are willing to give us at a lower cost, without compromising on quality. And now we are executing for cost. So I think the point I'm making is, as a startup, when you launch, you say, I execute for quality. I don't care about the cost. It sounds strange advice, but I think it's important advice, because you can't do both as a startup. For example, a steady business like, say, Paradise Biryani, it's a running business. So now you'll always say, I want the best quality, I want at the lowest cost, because they can optimize for that. Startups can't optimize for two parameters. So I think that's the way we did it.
Got it. Okay. Question now for Gautam, relating to phrases again from Guru Palasa about certification of your foods, right? I mean, for example, if it's meeting particular standards, international or Indian standards, organic ingredients and things of that kind, how does one think about it? I mean, is it an important thing? And if so, how do you go about it?
So I think it is becoming increasingly important, especially in the Indian market. If you are exporting, obviously there are statutory requirements, which you can't do away with. So that is something. I think the simple thing which we have understood is to work with entrenched, partners. So we work with NSF International for all sort of food safety related certification, right? We also, for example, use halal certificate, which is for all our meats that we use, which are provided by our suppliers, and they have an independent agency certifying that. So depending on your requirement, I think you will have to pick and choose and work on that. But I think the overall advice I would have is to work with established partners who are going to give you these certifications. I think reinventing the wheel in that is not advisable in my view. I think you just have to go with established partners. Sometimes you might have to spend a little extra, but if it is important for you, you better spend that. Like Vaithi said, to solve for quality first and then come the price. I think depending on how important it is for your business, you will make that call.
Got it. Question from Tara Aslam to Vaidi. What's the typical time frame from your R&D product development to the time you launched the again brand in the market, right? I mean, how much time should one budget for it? And a related question from Rituparna is on brand awareness. How much would you typically spend as a percentage?
So, Tara, let me take your question first. I don't think there's a very specific answer that it takes so much time for product development and so much time to launch. But let me tell you our example. I think we put very stiff conditions. We said our product must have no refined sugar, no preservative, no artificial color, no artificial flavor, yet must be ambient, should have 90 days shelf life. There is no product like this in the market. So we started working on those specs, I think, end of 2016, early 2017. We launched it in January 2019. So it took us 24 months. Now, really, we could have launched the product in less than half the time if we had just made one compromise, which is to say, let's put sugar or preservatives. So I think the decision of how long you take really depends on what is it that you want the product to contain or not contain. And if you're under pressure to launch faster, sometimes you can make compromises on the formulation and then launch faster, but we didn't. So in our case, we obviously took a long time. Now, how much would you invest really in building a brand? I really don't have an answer for it. I think our estimate is that to build a reasonably sustainable brand that we want to build over the next 5 years, we would need anywhere between $7 to $8 million at the least. But are we ready for that is the question, because if you spend so much of money, you're obviously not going to be profitable at all. And all that money is going to be spent hoping that sometime in future you'll actually recover the money. So it's a very, very risky game. I think the way I would say is, if every single dollar that goes into marketing, you must put your own thing, saying that you can't recover the cost of marketing initially. But you say, if I'm spending 100 rupees on marketing, can it result in 100 rupees of sales to start with? Forget 100 rupees of margins. Can I recover 100 rupees of sales? It may be a stiff goal, but I think if you do that, it does two things. Basically, you're spending less, and you're spending such that you're putting some output goal. That's the only way to keep it controlled, because in the FMCG business can be very, very capital intensive. And before you know, the money has been spent. And these are very, very fickle audiences. People could just drink today and say, yeah, it's a great drink and we'll buy it again and again. But tomorrow some other drink comes and they'll move, or it's winter, so they're not drinking beverages. You never know. I mean, it's very difficult to get a handle on fickle customer behavior. So spending large of money to buy that, unless you're a large brand, is a risky thing. So I would tread very carefully on marketing investments.
Right. Uh, Gautam, question from Akram Khan. He asks, regarding confidentiality, right? I mean, the recipes are key for your different biryanis. How do you ensure that the recipes are well protected, and that competitors don't kind of steal it and effectively start eating into your business?
So again, we have our R&D setup and we have all the IT controls. That's the hardware part of it. I think that's the given. But people travel, right? I mean, the chef who is working right now with us will go somewhere else. So is it completely watertight? No. But I think my own philosophical belief is that uh, while recipe has a role to play, I think it is not only recipe which differentiates the brand. I mean, if you ask our promoters who have been running this for last 65 years, they will say that recipe across all the other Hyderabadi players is more or less the same, right? The execution of it, which is your quality of ingredients, your consistency of taste, your training, your execution DNA, which is what I call the culture of execution, is very, very critical. And that differentiates, and that DNA resides in the organization. That cannot be copied, the best you try, right? So I know this is not a straight answer, but I guess that's my learning in terms of protecting your IP. I think your best IP in your business, whether large or small, is your culture of execution. Everything else can be copied, but not culture of execution. And that's something which is unique, and we must try and develop that.
Yeah. So I think that's true of all businesses, that the real secret weapon you have is an execution, right?
Yes.
Because everyone thinks of a great idea and all of that, but with 7 billion people, there are at least 10 billion ideas, right? The question is, how do you execute it? Question now for Vaidhi, and then I think Gautam can also respond to that. The question from Lalita, she asks, with this trend now towards veganism, plant-based diets, and all of it, how do you see that impacting your businesses? And if so, what steps are you taking to deal with it?
Should I go first?
Yes, Vaidhi, go ahead.
Yeah. So these are trends that sometime go on to become serious habits, and there are also some trends that remain trends briefly and then die out. Um, in a sense, veganism has been around for a while, but it's not yet mainstream. And when we are starting a business like this, we are hoping to hit the mainstream. So while we keep an eye on such things happening, um, trends coming up, small habits trying to grow, and we try and keep a sense of the numbers. What we are worried is, are they becoming mainstream? So at this point in time, the real answer is none of them are mainstream enough for us to worry about yet. And we are hoping that it doesn't become mainstream, obviously. The second thing, and this is something that I mentioned earlier, which is a big advantage of doing business in India. Even a small niche market in India is actually bigger than large markets globally. And therefore, sometimes you should not get too depressed by saying I'm targeting a niche market, because if you were doing the same business in Europe, the niche market size here would be much bigger than the total universe there. So don't worry about it. Even if it's a niche small market in India, if you execute well and target sharply, it can still become a meaningful business. I mean, everybody in India doesn't have to make a product that 1 billion people will consume. You can make a product that you think only 50 million people will consume. But if you can reach those 50 million people well enough, I think you still have a great idea and a great business opportunity. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, unless the whole world and everybody in the market has shifted and nobody is drinking milk and all of that. But if that happened, that's a different challenge. Right now, we are far away. We still continue to be the largest producer and consumer of milk products. So,
Yeah. Gautam, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, our business is based on meat. So very, I think, relevant question. However, I would agree in short with what Vaithi said, is that what does a business do in such a scenario? One is to keep very close watch on the trends externally across the world as well as in India. Secondly, keep a very close watch on what is happening in your business. What are people buying more? What are people buying less? And pivot at the right time. Sometimes going too early will be waste of resources. Sometimes going too late. For example, smartphones is a clear case where brands like Nokia and BlackBerry just lost it by a few quarters, and somebody else took over the business. Right. I think that's the leadership which people like us and our teams have to bring in, to have a close watch on what's going on and pivot and direct the company at the right time, right? I'm also hoping, like Veti, that this doesn't become a big, because our business is also this. But yeah, I think what is right for the humanity and what people will adopt is something which is not beyond one or two businesses. So I think that's the larger picture I have. Having said that, some global brands like McDonald's and all, which have huge pride, has already started to act on it. And this is something which is taken, cognizance by them, because their scale and their markets of operations are different, where things are slightly moving much faster. But I think in India, we sometimes have the luxury of waiting and watching, and sometimes we do not have the luxury. So, for example, I think India leapfrogged the whole pager thing, right? The entire world had pager, but in India, pager was there for a very, very small time, right? So, I think we have to be cognizant of our environment and be very nimble and open-minded about making a change. I think that's the way I would look at it.
Got it. I think we're almost almost at the end actually of the entire session. Quick sort of rapid fire responses from each of you. If a young entrepreneur or an entrepreneur comes up to you asking for advice, what's the one or two things each one of you would provide him or her? Vaitheeswaran first, and then Gautam. In
So
the
if
food and
an
beverages.
entrepreneur came to me with a food and beverage business, I would tell him or her that, look, the FMCG business runs only on three moving parts: brand, distribution, and product innovation. And I'm going to ask her, on what moving part are you planning to play your business? And if they say brand or distribution, then I'm going to tell them that don't waste time, because you're not going to compete with the biggest and build a bigger brand or a deeper distribution, or it'll cost you billions of dollars, which is not available. But if they have a product innovation which they believe is sustainable for at least 12 quarters minimum, which means nobody can create a product like that for 12 quarters, then I would say, let's talk. You should go launch. Otherwise, I would say stay away.
So 12 quarters as in 4 years.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Gautam?
Yeah, so if somebody were to, take advice of food services business, I think I would say the first thing is to be passionate about food, right? If somebody is passionate about food, then a large part of the challenge is, you have to be really passionate about food to start a food services business. Obviously, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm a professional. So I'm saying from the learnings I have seen of promoters and people who have built these great businesses. Second is, I think, which is logical, but I still believe in it, that belief and perseverance is very, very critical. When I talk to our promoters who have been running this business very successfully for over 50 years, I think there have been many ups and downs, but what I've seen is belief and perseverance continuously, right? Going through the ups and downs. I think that is something which is logical advice to give.
Great. Thank you so much, Gautam and Vedi. Great pleasure to have had both of you. Thank you for your time. I think it's been, at least for all of us, it's been immense value hearing from two practitioners in the field, both on the food and the beverage side. And I hope it's been of great value to all our budding entrepreneurs and other participants. So all remains for me to thank them for attending this and participating in good measure. Thank you both. And what I'll now do is, since we've gone through this process, I would just last little bit of housekeeping. Somebody had asked a question about about the I'm not able to move the screen now. Just a minute. Yeah, about where to find the earlier recordings. Please visit the LinkedIn group, the nice Aarohana website, the web page rather, and you'll find recordings of all our earlier sessions. So thanks once again to Gautam and Vaiti and to all of you. And please tune in again on 18th November at the same time, 4 p.m. We'll have another Ask Me Anything on the category of fashion and accessories. We have Bandana Tiwari, who is a sustainable fashion activist and a well-known fashion journalist. And we have Reena, who is the founder and designer of Eka. So I'm sure all those who are in the fashion accessories business will find great value. So all, thank you very, very much, and good day to you all. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you. Have a
Thank
great day.
you. Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks,
You
Gautam.
all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.